Hey, fight fans, thanks for joining us and welcome to The Weigh-In, the show that spotlights the latest MMA bouts and the topics surrounding the sport. I'm Dorian, Mr. MMA Hernandez, and with me as always, Nathan Tyrone.
And tonight we're going to weigh in on UFC 190, Ronda Rousey versus Correia that takes place Saturday, August 1st in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Take it away, Mr. MMA.
All right, and we're going to start with the prelims, and the first fight in the prelims card is going to be in the bantamweight division. It's going to have the number 13 ranked Yuri Maharo Alcantara versus Leandro Brondino Isa. Alcantara, since his WEC merge, has gone 6-3 with one no contest in the UFC cage, with his last loss coming in February of this year by unanimous decision. Isa is only 2-1 in the UFC, with both victories coming by way of submission, with that last one coming in December of last year. My weigh-in, I'm going to go with Alcantara. His experience overall, 31-6, I think is going to be too big of a jump for Isa, and it's going to be an interesting fight, but ultimately, Alcantara is going to get his hand raised.
Oh, okay. Well, Alcantara's, becoming a bit of a journeyman, and Isa, he's done okay since he's left the house, but I think that the experience and just the overall skill set, the toughness of Alcantara, he's going to pull it off too. I'm going to agree with Mr. MMA and weigh in with Alcantara as well.
All right, next on the card is going to be in the welterweight division. It's going to have Warley Alves versus Nordin Taleb. Alves is 9-0 in his overall professional MMA career. He was on the Ultimate Fighter Season 3 of Brazil on Team Sonnen. His last win came in last year in November by unanimous decision. Taleb was on the Ultimate Fighter Nations Team Canada, is 10-2 in his overall MMA career, but in the cage is 3-0 with his last win coming in April by unanimous decision. My weigh-in, Alves. I feel he's definitely the more rounded fighter and has that KO power. No matter which round he touches you, he can put your lights out. Yeah, so absolutely. I see Alves getting the raise on this one.
Yeah, Alves is a tough cookie. He strikes a hard percentage, about 45% accuracy, and he's just a well-rounded, all-around fighter. Good standing, good takedowns, decent on the ground, better than Taleb. Taleb is a good, tough stand-up fighter, but he is craptastic on the ground. He needs to work on that, and so I'm going to agree with Mr. MMA also and give us to Alves.
I like that word too, craptastic.
Yeah, I do what I can.
I like that one. All right, next on the card, it's in the light heavyweight division. We got the number 10 ranked Rafael Feijão Cavalcante versus the number 14 ranked Patrick Durkin Cummins. Let's start with Cavalcante first. Ever since his PED violation in 2012 for stanozolol, he's gone 1-2 in the cage, with his last loss coming in June of last year by unanimous decision. Cummins is 3-2 in the UFC. His last loss came in April of this year by TKO to OSP in the first round over St. Preux. But my weigh-in for this fight, I'm going to go with Cummins. I usually I have a tendency of not leaning with guys who are especially PED violators. And don't get me wrong, Cavalcante has always been a good fighter. But to me, especially when you have to wean off of them and with all the stringent testing that the UFC is going to do now, I think that between Cummins' strength and cardio, it's going to be too much for Feijão. And ultimately, I'm gonna think that Cummins is going to make the amends that he needs to his striking, because Feijão, just like over St. Preux, has knockout power. So we're going to see the adaptations and his progression in this fight, I believe. And I see Cummins getting his hand raised at the end.
Oh, okay. Well, look, I like both of these fighters. Both of these fighters are well matched. So kudos to UFC for making a match, like this. And there's several really good matchups on this card. I'm not going to hold it against Cavalcante. I think the NC is deserved and disgusting. But I'm not going to hold it against him moving forward. If you guys want to know more about why those drugs are considered performance enhancing, or more about performance enhancing drugs, check us out. We've made an episode about it in The Truth About called PED. So check that out. But back to it. I think that Cavalcante is going to recover just fine. I think that he's off the juice, hopefully. And I'm going to go with him. I like his stand-up. I like his jiu-jitsu a little better. And so I'm going to go against Mr. MMA on this one and say that Cavalcante will probably take the win.
Nice. All right. Now for the main fight on the prelims. It's going to be a classic striker versus grappler in the welterweight division. It has the number 6 ranked Damian Maia versus the number 12 ranked Neil Magny. Maia is coming off a long layoff after dealing with a serious staph infection of August of last year. Magny is presently riding a 7-fight win streak, with his last win coming in May of this year by TKO. My ultimate weigh-in, I'm going to go with Magny, and that's a little bit of a stretch on there because I know how Maia can be. That boy is a wet T-shirt. Whether you're a good striker or not, once he gets in that range and can get his hands on you, it is almost virtually impossible to get him off. But Magny has been surprising me over and over again, especially, like I said, with that 7-fight win streak. Look it up, folks. He has some high-level grapplers in there, guys that really put him to the test. And what's even funnier is that some of those guys, Magny submitted. Okay, so ultimately, I think the long layoff is going to hurt Maia, and as long as Magny can keep it on the stand-up and do his footwork well, Magny's going to get his hand raised and move up in the rankings.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I agree 100% with that. I think that Magny's been on a tear. He's hungry, he's fast, he's young, he's got everything going his way. He's developing well, he's growing in every single fight. Maia's a good, ground guy, and he's a good fighter. I mean, give it to him. I'm not taking anything away from him. But I just think that Mr. MMA is 100% correct. The hungry, young, active fighter is going to have his hand raised against Maia on this one.
All right, fight fans, and now we're on to the meaty part of this card. And just a reminder, this is a 7-fight main card, not the typical 5. Yeah. So we're going to start off the great slobber knocker evening with the women's strawweight division. It's going to have the number 2 ranked Claudia Gadelha versus Jessica Aguilar. And I'm going to start with Gadelha first. In her overall professional MMA career is 12-1, is 1-1 in the UFC, with her last loss coming in December of last year to the present strawweight champ, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Okay, Aguilar is 19-4 in her overall professional MMA career and is presently riding a 10-fight winning streak. For those of you who might not know, she was the former World Series of Fighting strawweight champion and vacated the belt in order to come over to the UFC and start fighting the upper echelon of her division. My weigh-in, though, I'm going to go with Gadelha. She had, between her split decision loss to the champ, which means that she was really close to beating her. Okay, the fact that 7 out of the 23 fights that Aguilar has had, she's fought the same opponents, either twice, even one of them 3 times. And if you look at those results, her competitor moved up in performance, but she pretty much stayed stagnant or very little progress. More than anything, too, I feel that she barely even beat the ex-champ Carla Esparza, and she beat her by split decision. Everybody knows Joanna Jędrzejczyk knocked her the heck out. Badly. So I'm going to factor that in, and since this is another typical grappler versus striker match, and Gadelha is a vicious grappler. Look at her stats. Most of her wins by submission. I think she's going to wear down Aguilar slowly but surely, and in the end get her hand raised.
Well, yeah. And just possibly because this is another good matchup. I mean, this is one of the fights where I just don't know. I love Aguilar. I followed her throughout her other competitions at WSOF, and I really like Gadelha. If this were a beauty contest, Gadelha would win hands down. She's a hot one. But I don't think that she's fought the depth of competition that Aguilar's fought. Yes, she did show a great showing with Jędrzejczyk, but I feel like Aguilar can take that steam from her, can beat her, and then roll on to that. People start asking, whoa, if she did that, then what happens now? And I'm going to have to say that the old champ will come through, and Aguilar is going to be, the champ of this. So I'm going to weigh in on that one. She's going to win.
Nice. All right, now we're on to the big boys, the heavyweight division. We got the number 12 ranked Antonio Bigfoot Silva versus Soa the Hulk Pelele. Let's start with Silva first. Since coming to the UFC from Strikeforce, has gone 2-4-1. That one draw being a memorable fight with Mark Hunt. But is presently riding a 2-fight losing streak, with his last loss coming in February of this year by TKO to Frank Mir in the first round. All right. Pelele is 22-4 in his overall MMA career, but is 4-2 in the UFC. Not that great, but not that bad either. Okay, with his last one coming in November of last year by TKO. But my way in, I'm going to go with Pelele. Silva has shown sometimes too much sloppiness in his striking, and it's mainly because you don't know which Silva showed up to fight that night. Is it the aggressive, monstrous, Donkey Kong destroying, Silva? Even though I know that was one of those old, Mark Munoz terminologies, I think it fits Silva. But like I said, it matters on who shows up, and on the law of averages, it's not the Silva that I usually expect to show up. And Pelele has that knockout power. It doesn't matter if it's the first round, second round, third round. If he touches you and he touches you clean, he's going to put your lights out. So I see Pelele getting his hand raised.
Yeah, he's a scary, scary puncher. I think he's knocked people out like 12 out of the 13 fights. It's sick. It's some sick stuff.
Over
He's had some
50%.
notable knockouts. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's had some notable knockouts. He knocked out Nikita Krylov. He knocked out Sean McCorkle, and he knocked out Pat Barry among them. I mean, none of those guys are ever going to be champion, but I mean, those guys rumble, and they come to fight. So give it up. I mean, those are some notable knockouts for him. But I like Bigfoot. I think Bigfoot is one of those fighters who, yeah, he got tapped for some PEDs, and so his confidence in himself obviously is waning, but I have confidence in him. He is hot and cold. He does run unpredictably, but I'm going to have to weigh in with Bigfoot. I think he's going to take this one. He's had tougher competition, and he's come out ahead. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, I want to touch on that PD violation. Silva, out of all the guys, is one of those guys that I least look down on. This is a guy who actually has a legitimate medical condition, and the TRT before the ban came up was actually a good procedure that was helping him with his acromegaly.
Yeah.
So let's not look too unfavorable, and don't think of us as a hypocrite. One minute we're going for a guy with that's PEDs, and next minute we're talking crap about a guy who was on it. But ultimately, like I said, it's a touch and go with Silva, and I'm gonna go with Pelele just for the fact that your man is always trying to finish. All right. Next on the card is going to be another heavyweight matchup. It has the number 15 ranked Stefan Skyscraper Struve versus Minotauro Nogueira. Let's start with Struve first. He's 29-7 in his overall professional MMA career, but is 9-5 in the UFC, riding a 2-fight losing streak at present, with his last loss coming in December of last year by TKO to Alistair Overeem. Nogueira, since UFC 73, has gone 5-5 in the UFC. He's also presently riding a 2-fight losing streak like Struve, with his last loss coming in April of last year by TKO to Roy Nelson. My way-in, I'm going to go with Struve. I have to choose the lesser of two evils here, so I'm going to go with the younger, the taller, and I feel the more hungrier fighter who wants to prove himself. Minotauro has been kind of gliding. I think, like my cohort likes to say, he doesn't mind being a gatekeeper anymore. I don't think he's ever going to really be a contender or go for the gold again. And Struve can still go for the gold and still has that hunger for it. And I mean, even after all the medical issues that he went through and everything, and the UFC helped out with that, found specialists and everything to help him and get this man back in the cage, I'm gonna go with Struve, and I think he'll get his hand raised.
All right, and this is a fight that has one of both Nogueiras in it, or rather a card that has one of both Nogueiras in it, and it's hopefully a return to form for Stefan Struve. I love Stefan Struve. Let's not forget the heart that this guy comes with. When this guy comes to fight, there's no second best. There's only him trying to do his absolute best to win that fight each and every time out. Now, when he got cracked by Mark Hunt and suffered that brutal chin split, I mean, that was devastating. That was just devastating to me to see as a fan, and I'm sure for him as a fighter to return from. And then he had the bad luck of being matched up against a hungry Alistair Overeem, who was on a few losses and really needed a win against Struve, and actually pulled out the win that he needed. So Struve has not had the best pull of the cards. Nogueira hasn't had a notable win since 2009, and I know you guys are going to hate me because you're going to be like, oh, but he beat Brandon Schaub. I don't think beating Brandon Schaub is too notable of a win. And so that's 2009, kids. We're in 2015. Stefan Struve is ready, hungry, and he needs redemption for himself and to the fans and for everybody. He's hungry for it, and he's going to get it. So I'm going to agree with Mr. MMA and say Stefan, the Skyscraper, will have his hand in the air.
All right, fight fans. The next fight is going to be in the bantamweight division. It's going to have Reginaldo Vieira versus Delino Lopez. I'm going to start with Vieira first. He was on the Ultimate Fighter Season 4 Brazil on Team Nogueira. Is 13-3 in his overall MMA career, riding a 2-fight win streak coming into his UFC debut. Lopez also on the Ultimate Fighter Season 4 of Brazil on Team Shogun. 19-1 in his overall professional MMA career. But mind you, only 2 out of those wins by decision.
Right.
Okay, all the rest finishes. He is presently riding a 5-fight win streak coming into his UFC debut. And I can't lie, these guys are so equally matched up. I'm just going to have to tell you, I'm using the Force on this one. And the Force tells me Lopez with the victory.
Wise are you? This match and several previous matches are just so well matched up that for a fight fan, you're like, okay, I might not know these guys that much. A lot of these guys, my mouth is watering and I'm hungry too. I mean, I might not know them, but it's like, I want to know them. I want to see what's going on because there's some sick jiu-jitsu that's going to be at hand here. I'm talking about opponents, or rather contenders, that can whip each other around in sick-ass jiu-jitsu at the blink of an eye, man. So I really don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you do. Maybe you should chime in if you've got a better input than I. So I'm going to default to Mr. MMA on this one because I was befuddled by the competition. I think that maybe Bruno might take it. But I don't know.
Oh, no.
I don't know. Lopez
Not
rather
really
might
yet.
take it, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure, so I'm gonna leave it to the pros to tell.
All right. And the next fight is again in the bantamweight division. It has Glaico Nego Franca versus Fernando Aguilar Bruno.
Yeah.
Wow, say that 3 times real fast, right?
I dare you.
Okay. Well, let's start with Franca. He was also a participant in the Ultimate Fighter Season 4 Brazil. He was on Team Shogun. He is also 13-3 overall in his professional MMA career, with only 2 of those 13 wins by decision. He is presently riding a 2-fight win streak coming into his UFC debut. Bruno, also the Ultimate Fighter Brazil Season 4 contestant, Team Nogueira. He's 16-2 in his overall professional MMA career and is presently riding a 5-fight win streak coming into his UFC debut.
Yeah.
But my way in, I'm going to go with Franca. I mean, both these guys have an excellent grappling pedigree, but out of the two, Franca is the better striker. And let's be honest, it starts with the striking first before you get into the grappling. I believe that Franca is not going to be afraid wherever this fight goes.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he feels extra confident in his striking, especially against his opponent, and keeps it on the stand-up and ultimately gets his hand raised.
Yeah. And I'm going to agree 100% with him. I think that Franca is going to overtake Bruno, and ultimately his ground game, I believe, is going to just pull him out. So I agree with Mr. MMA on this one. Franca's for the win.
All right, folks, and now the co-main event of the evening. Okay, and this is a old school pride matchup, folks. It's going to be in the light heavyweight division. It's the number 8 ranked Mauricio Shogun Rua versus the number 11 ranked Antonio Nogueira. Okay, let's start with Rua first. Since his loss to John Jones, has gone 3-5 in the cage.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
he is presently riding a 2-fight losing streak, with his last loss coming in November of last year by TKO to OSP over St. Preux.
Yeah.
Nogueira, since UFC 106, has gone 4-3 in the cage.
Yeah.
Last loss was last year in July by TKO to Anthony Rumble Johnson, which that fight ended up giving Rumble Johnson #1 contendership against Daniel Cormier after the John Jones incident. But my way in for this fight, I'm gonna go with Rua. I've always liked Rua. I think he's always been the younger and the more vicious of the two. And whenever he fights somebody for the second time, he always improves by leaps and bounds. If you don't believe me, look it up on his record. Almost every single opponent that he has fought a second time, it almost made the first time made you wonder what the hell happened in that first fight. Yeah. Okay. But both of these guys, no matter what, I believe, have their backs to the wall. They're getting to almost to that sweet swan song of their career. But like I said, I'm going to go with the younger and possibly the hungrier of the two fighters, Rua, for the victory.
Right. I mean, but he's talking younger in years, but in fighter years, these guys are journeymen. Both of them are like living legends. They've got nothing to prove to anyone.
Nope.
They fight simply because they love to fight. I mean, if I may make a corny metaphor, it reminds me of me watching a star come to me, a faded star from a distant star, and just seeing the faded light hit me. Does that make it any less beautiful knowing that this star might already be dead? These guys don't have championship material anymore. They're not going to be contenders, and for that I wonder why they want to fight, risk themselves. They've got their health and their wealth, but they do. And granted, I'm thankful. I'm a fight fan. I like to see them bang, but man, when will the sun set on these champs? That being said, I'm going to agree 100% with what Mr. MMA said, and I believe that Rua is going to redeem himself a bit in the UFC and walk away with the win.
Hope nobody kills us because we've been against both Nogueira brothers tonight.
Yeah, really. Right? No offense, Nogueira
brothers. None. Nothing but love for you, man.
Really, really. It's the fight game.
But now, the fight we are all been tuning in for and waiting for, folks. The main event of the evening in the women's bantamweight division. The champion, Ronda Rousey, versus Betch, the Pitbull Correia. I'm going to do this a little bit different. Usually I talk about both fighters. I'm just going to go straight into it. The 3 reasons why Ronda Rousey is going to win this fight. Number 1, Betch Correia's first split decision win over Julie Kedzie. Yeah. Everyone knows Julie Kedzie is a seasoned veteran.
That's right.
A woman who has had her chin, forehead, everything tested.
Yeah.
Okay, and ultimately it was a split decision win, which means that Correia barely won that. And shortly after, Kedzie announced her retirement and became Invicta FC's fight matchmaker. Okay.
Good for her. Good job.
You know, reason number 2. The unanimous decision win that Correia got over Jessamyn Duke in April of last year. I'm going to remind you that Jessamyn Duke broke her hand on Correia's face, okay, number 1, in the first round. Also, could not throw kicks because you know how camps feel about if someone has a better grappling pedigree. You don't want to kick a wrestler or kick a grappler for fear of the fight taking to the ground,
right.
Especially if you broke your hand on their head in the first round. So Correia couldn't even beat, to me, a green fighter in Jessamyn Duke, okay, who was fighting not only with the handicap, literally, but also with the handicap in her offense because part of her offense was limited.
Yeah.
So that, to me, says something. She couldn't even finish a girl who was basically served up to her in a platter to defeat. Yeah. Okay, reason number 3, her TKO win over Shayna Baszler in August of last year. Number 1, Shayna, or I guess 1B to this third point, is that Shayna was also coming off a layoff due to injury. She had lost her first fight to Juliana Pena in the Ultimate Fighter, and then got injured and couldn't compete for the rest of the season. So she was given 2 fights, actually. I forgot who she fought before Correia, but she fights Correia for a second chance to prove that she deserved to be on the roster, and ultimately Correia TKO'd her. Right. But if you watch that fight, Shayna Baszler never lost consciousness. Shayna Baszler never turtled up. Okay? And the Shayna Baszler that showed up to fight did not look like the Queen of Spades that I saw fight in Strikeforce or fight Gina Carano. Now, not to take away from Baszler because I'm still somewhat of a fan, but if the fighter that you expect doesn't show up, you have to factor that in.
Absolutely.
And that was the only finish out of Correia's first 3 matches. So let's not kid ourselves, folks. She's the best runner-up to throw at Rousey. My 4th and final reason why Rousey's going to win, Betch Correia's fighting style is totally dedicated, or to be,
it's
geared towards Rousey's
aggressive striker
and strength. Okay, because no matter what, Correia is a brawler. Okay, you do not want to brawl with Rousey. You do not want to clinch with Rousey. You do not even want to get within 3 feet. You want to 1-2 get out, 1-2-3 get out. And Correia cannot do that. I don't see her even being able to do that, even if she bothered to learn it in this camp. So ultimately, Rousey's going to win. And unfortunately for Correia, for her little comments that she made, during the press conferences and interviews, you're going to see a punishment that night. Ronda Rousey stays the women's bantamweight champion.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to go on length about it. We've got a fighter spotlight for Ronda Rousey where we tell you exactly what we think. I'm going to tell you why I think it's a good thing for Betch Correia. Betch Correia, I think, is a bit outmatched. I don't think she's going into a fight that's as even as a lot of the fights on the card. But she gets to fight a prize fight, a big prize fight, in her hometown for the belt. I mean, what does a fighter want, if not exactly that? And so good for Betch Correia. This might be one of the highlights, the peaks of her career, if not the peak of her career. I mean, who knows, she may at one point change a weight class, or there might be expansion of divisions, and she might have other opportunities. But as long as Ronda Rousey is the queen of this division, I do not believe without a lot of progress, Betch Correia could even stand a chance. And so I'm going to weigh in with Ronda Rousey as well.
All right, fight fans. Well, those are our predictions for UFC 190. Make sure you hit me up on Twitter, Mr. MMA, at the Weigh-In MMA. I'm always tweeting through in the fights and keeping our weigh-in page posted with the results. And chime in. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you think is going to win the fights and why. Or if you had any disagreements with my predictions, just let us know.
Absolutely. And thanks for joining us, guys. We really appreciate it. Hey, why don't you support us by clicking subscribe down there in the corner? And, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Weigh-In.
Yeah.